Located in Australia's third largest city, the Brisbane Roar were once the most formidable teams in the A-League. Under the stewardship of Ange Postecoglou, the Roar became the first team to win back-to-back national titles in the A-League era, went on a record 36-game undefeated run, and one of the most enjoyable teams to watch in an era when football in the A-League wasn't particularly great to watch. From 2011 to 2014, the Roar were the undisputed kings of the A-League, ultimately winning 3 grand finals in the space of just 4 seasons. But since then, the club has fallen on tough times. It is, quite simply, a club in crisis. The Roar has failed to play finals football in the past 3 seasons and is set to miss out again in 24-25 after yet another woeful season where they just avoided the wooden spoon. The club underwent a failed relocation to Redcliffe for 2 seasons in recent years before coming back to play at its traditional home at Lang Park. The club has gone through 8 coaches in 6 years, with Michael Valkanis the latest person to step up to the head job in recent days. Topping it off, the Roar are playing in front of the worst crowds the club has ever seen outside the COVID-19 pandemic. So how did it go so wrong for one of the competition's biggest clubs? Well, it was the Bakries. That's what went wrong. I could end the video here now, but I think you're after a bit more of an explainer than just the Bakries, especially if you're not a Brisbane fan. You probably actually want to know what I'm talking about. I'm not actually mispronouncing Bakrie or something like that. I'm talking about the owners of the club. Before we dive into the rest of the video and I tell you about the Bakries and their woeful mismanagement of the Brisbane Roar, I just want to remind you to please like the video, subscribe to the channel. It really helps support us. You can also find us on social media. I do also want to plug our new Discord channel where we're discussing everything about football down under in Australia. I'll leave a link to that in the description for the video. But let's continue. So who are the Bakries? Well, they're the owners of the Brisbane Roar who took over the club back in September 2011. When the Bakrie Group acquired a 70% stake in the Roar. An Indonesian conglomerate founded by Ahmed Bakrie in 1942, the Bakrie Group has interests in various industries including mining, oil and gas, property and development, infrastructure, plantations, and telecommunications. All boring stuff, really. Of course, they have interests in football. We can't forget about that. The most important thing. In 2007, Forbes Asia estimated the Bakrie family had $5.4 billion in wealth, but that dropped to about $850 million after the 2008 financial crisis. Since then, it's been a bit hard to gauge exactly how much the Bakries are worth, but they're definitely not short of $1. In fact, they're still worth tens and hundreds of millions, as far as my understanding is. So the Bakrie Group, like I said, bought Brisbane Roar from the FFA back in 2011, with the governing body having run the club since March 2011 after the previous ownership group handed back the license following financial losses. So to get into a bit more of a story about how the ownership came into play, then FFA boss Ben Buckley and A-League chief executive Lyle Gorman first met with the Bakries after they learned about their interest in football as well as the business looking for mining assets down under. They eventually flew over to Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia, and they told the Bakrie executives in their meeting that the club they would be taking over would need minimal supervision and offered technical support for a player academy in Indonesia. A heads of agreement was signed and delivered to Buckley on the Nawana golf course in Bali, also owned by the Bakrie family, to seal the deal. It seemed like a good deal to Bakrie executive Chris Fong, who knew little about football, but was drafted by Nerwin Bakrie to look after the family's new investment. So relaxed were the Bakries that the family even sent the money through to the FFA without receiving a transfer of ownership document when the deal was announced. Fong waited and waited, finally deciding to follow the matter up with Gorman. In fact, if you want to find out more about actually what went down, there's a great book out there. It's called The A-League, Inside Story of the Tumultuous First Decade by John Stensholt and Sean Mooney. This is where I've got most of my information about how the deal for the Bakries to buy Brisbane came about. So back to the Bakries purchasing Brisbane. Fong told Gorman the documents were actually still on the bottom of his drawer. Silfong waited as the days passed. He claimed the FFA said the deal needed guarantees that the Bakries would inject capital into the Roar annually to cover its shortfalls. Frustrated, Fong got the lawyers involved, instructing the deal would be unwound. The FFA and Bakrie's lawyers eventually restructured the deal, agreeing that the FFA would sell its 30% share in the Roar within 18 months. The Bakrie Group ultimately paid $8 million for the original 70% share in the club. Fong negotiated for the Bakries to have a right of veto over who the FFA could sell the minority stake to, and, if no sale was reached, the Bakries would gradually gain portions of the 30% share left. A deal was struck between the parties, and an announcement made in early February 2012 confirmed the Bakries were 100% owners of the Roar. After all the difficulties he had experienced in dealing with the FFA, Fong decided to take revenge. The Bakries had bought the remaining 30% at a good discount and then didn't pay the FFA at first. The Bakries eventually paid the FFA the remaining money drip-fed over a series of installments. As we will get into later in the video, we'll learn a bit more about the Bakries and their unwillingness, despite their wealth, to spend money. So it wasn't a good start to life under the Roar's new Indonesian owners, not helped by some incompetence from the FFA and the A-League in selling the club. But anyway, life under the Bakries wasn't too bad to start with, at least. The Roar won a consecutive grand final in 2012 after a late-minute controversial winner against Perth Glory, before winning a third in 4 seasons, beating the Western Sydney Wanderers in extra time in 2014. But things started to kick off in 2015, and when I mean kick off, not in a good way. Some of the first major legal issues were springing up for the Bakries. Let's have a look at some of these legal issues, and when I say some, there's actually quite a few. And I think as we look at some of these legal issues the Bakries have been involved in, I think you'll start to undersee the issues at Brisbane Roar. I think one of the first things we can look at is the situation around Ballymore Stadium, which is the traditional home of Queensland Rugby Union. The QRU filed an application to have the Roar wound up in July 2015 after submitting documents to the Queensland Supreme Court for nearly 12 months of outstanding rent payments at Ballymore, the Roar's former training base. This wasn't the first time the Roar had been in debt to Rugby Union, with the QRU having previously written off unpaid rent. The Roar had moved into Ballymore in 2008, and its agreement to use the QRU's facilities only expired in June 2015. The move by the QRU came just 2 weeks after Chairman Chris Fong declared the club would be sold after reaching an agreement with a new buyer. But as the Roar is still owned by the Bakries to this day, that deal obviously didn't happen. Fong never named the interested party, so it may have just been all talk by the chairman to avoid discussing the unpaid payments. A month later, now MacArthur footballer Luke Braddon had his Roar contract terminated in August 2015 due to unpaid superannuation. The Roar had been put on notice on July 21, 2015 regarding the unpaid super and had a fortnight to make the outstanding contributions, but failed to do so. In September 2015, former Roar coach and grand final winner Mike Mulvey sued the Roar for owed money after being sacked the previous year. He sought about $270,000 plus damages for deceit and misleading conduct from the Roar. After the Roar lost an application for Mulvey to proceed with suing, they settled out of court. Moving on to Robbie Fowler, who once had stints with North Queensland Fury and Perth Glory. He was appointed Brisbane Roar coach in April 2019, signing a 2-year contract. But in March the following year, the world fell apart and the COVID-19 pandemic struck. Fowler resigned from the club to be closer to his family due to the outbreak of the pandemic. At least that was the message of Chris Fong. But the Sydney Morning Herald revealed in August 2020 that Fowler's contract had actually been terminated by the Roar in retaliation for comments he made in a BN Sports interview, which they deemed to have damaged the club's reputation in front of a worldwide audience. Fowler took the matter to FIFA, and he ultimately had a legal win when the world governing body's dispute resolution chamber found he had been wrongfully dismissed by the Roar. FIFA ordered the Roar to pay damages to Fowler, as well as his assistant Tony Grant. The amount owing is a 6-figure sum that equates to about 3 months of lost income for Fowler and Grant. Between their sacking from the Roar in June 2020 to the start of their tenure at East Bengal in the Indian Super League in October 2020. Fowler ultimately donated the majority of his successful claim to a Brisbane-based children's charity. And while then Chief Executive Dave Bakrie said the club was satisfied with the outcome and would accept the decision, he claimed FIFA had refused to recognise the rule of law found in the Fair Work Act in Australia. Quoting the Chief Executive, he said, "FIFA, it seems, has in effect punished us as a result of the coronavirus interruption to the A-League season, which is clearly unfair and means that foreign coaches are in a better legal position than the majority of Australians who have suffered from stand-downs as a result of the pandemic." Later that same month, there was a $150,000 court battle brewing over allegations from Logan City Council of a year's worth of unpaid bills by, you guessed it, the Brisbane Roar. The Roar had leased its training base at Heritage Park from the City Council since June 5, 2018, after leaving Ballymore. But the council lodged a case against the club in the Brisbane District Court on August 11, 2020. The council was suing the Roar over allegations of $153,000 in unpaid utility bills between October 1, 2018 and December 31, 2019. Due to the dispute, the Roar moved its training base to the Gold Coast Sports Precinct in the suburb of Carrara on the Gold Coast, a completely different city to Brisbane. But it returned to Ballymore for training in 2023. But after less than a month training there, the club left due to concerns over the quality of the training surface, and the men started training at Meakin Park, while the women went to the Queensland Sport and Athletics Centre. The men's team remain at Meakin Park, with the Roar's plans to move to a facility at Brendale in limbo. More drama followed in November 2021 with an ex-player when former Socceroo Brett Holman won a legal battle against the Roar over insurance money that the club withheld when he suffered a career-ending injury. The Roar were ordered to pay $369,000 for an insurance payout, plus almost $42,000 in interest, and also cover Holman's courts cost. One of the most bizarre dramas in Brisbane's most recent times was surrounding Corey Brown. In August 2022, a feud erupted between the longtime club stalwart and the Brisbane Roar after the club sacked him for serious misconduct over alleged drug use. The Professional Footballers Australia, the union that represents professional footballers down under, called the decision by the Roar to sack Brown as bizarre and misleading. Brown, who had never failed a drug test, vehemently denied the allegations and in response initiated legal proceedings against the club. Brown ultimately won, and the Roar made a public apology in July 2023, claiming the decision was made under old management, but that Brown would return to the club for the 2023-24 season. Incredibly, he's still on the Brisbane books, despite the public humiliation by the club. I don't know, if that was me, it'd be great that I won the legal battle, but I don't think I'd want to go back to that club. And guess what was happening at the same time with all this Brown drama? Well, the Fair Work Ombudsman was investigating the Roar after receiving complaints that players from the club's youth team were being underpaid. Sources told the Sydney Morning Herald that the Roar's youth team, who were on amateur contracts, were asked to sacrifice $500 per week during the first COVID-19 shutdown in 2020 to pay for medical and fitness services. When players were placed on the JobKeeper wages subsidy program, money received from the government was withheld from the club. This was happening when Football Queensland was threatening to kick out the Roar's academy teams from the NPL Queensland system, unless it repaid an unpaid debt of over $100,000, which had been outstanding for a number of years. From 2025, Football Queensland basically took over the running of the Roar's NPL team, a move that has been widely denounced by rival clubs including Gold Coast Knights, Lions FC, Wynnum Wolves, Peninsula Power, Moreton City Excelsior, Rochdale Rovers, Brisbane Knights, Brisbane City, Sunshine Coast Wanderers, everyone. Football Queensland handed the Gold Coast Knights a show cause notice, and to be honest, this whole drama with the state's governing body is worth its own deep dive video. But let's get back to the Roar. Ahead of the 2020-21 season, the Brisbane Roar relocated to Dolphin Stadium, playing all 13 of its A-League men's games at Redcliffe, after successfully hosting 2 games at the boutique venue the previous season. During those 2 matches, the Roar pulled crowds of 9,387 and 9,224, which were fantastic turnouts in the 10,000-seater stadium. It was an excellent product on TV and for the fans to see games taken to a different region in Queensland. But one of the biggest motivations for Brisbane to move to Redcliffe permanently was rent. While costs have never been made public, some people estimate that the Roar were paying in excess of $150,000 to play a game at Lang Park. So almost up to $2 million a season. For owners that are notoriously stingy, it is surprising they were never kicked out of Lang Park for unpaid fees, considering all their issues around training facilities. While there's been no public figures made available, it's understood the Roar playing out of Dolphin Stadium was considerably cheaper, as it's owned by the Redcliffe Dolphins Rugby League Club and not the Queensland Government, who charge an arm and a leg to play at Lang Park. But there was a reason Dolphin Stadium was an unpopular permanent move for so many fans, as it was located almost 40 kilometres north of Lang Park. It's an almost 40-minute drive. If you want to use public transport, you're looking at an almost 2-hour journey by train and bus. Some argue, and I'm not a Brisbane local, so I'll let you viewers decide, that Redcliffe is not even in Brisbane. According to Wikipedia, the suburb is located in the City of Moreton Bay Council area, which is technically defined as north of Brisbane, not in the northern suburbs of Brisbane. But once again, I am not from Brisbane, so I'll let you guys in the comments decide whether Redcliffe is in Brisbane or not. But the move to Redcliffe was motivated by money with cheaper rent and a smaller venue. But attendances at Lang Park had been dropping for years. The Roar had been averaging 13,892 during the 2016-17 season, but it dropped to just 9,388 in 2019-20. Crowds dropped to just 4,538 in the 21-22 season. While these numbers were during the COVID-19 pandemic, Queensland mostly avoided large-scale lengthy lockdowns. By 2022-23, Roar moved 3 games back to Lang Park and moved back permanently to the centre of Brisbane for the 23-24 season, where it has remained since. During the 24-25 season, Brisbane averaged just 5,463 back at Lang Park, another drastic drop-off. But it's more of a reflection of the club's horrendous form on the field, combined with midweek matches and shocking weather. The Roar has already confirmed that it's planning to keep playing at Lang Park in 25-26, but there is hope, however slim it may be, that this club may move into Perry Park one day. But there is hope, and when I say the hope, it's quite slim. There is hope that Perry Park might be renovated into a boutique venue that the Roar might be able to one day call home. But for now, that is just a dream. Days after the end of the 24-25 season, Ruben Zatkovich agreed with the Roar to mutually part ways, bringing the end of his short tenure as coach. But following a final round win over the Central Coast, Zatkovich lamented that his video analyst is also a pizza restaurant manager, implying that the analyst's job at the Roar was not paid. It's crazy to think in this professional era that a video analyst is not paid by the club. It just shows the lengths that the Bakries are willing to not put any money into this club. Now, all of these things that I've mentioned you, all these legal issues, all the issues around stadiums, all of the issues around not paying people what they're owed and what they've earned, raises questions about just how little the Bakries are spending on the Roar. It also brings into question the APL and its standards for owners. What are they? Can it force club owners to follow in certain requirements? Could they strip owners of their license if they're not fulfilling their end of the bargain? It's happened before. Look at Gold Coast United, for example. I mean, it's not like the Bakries have come close to breaching its license agreement in the past, though. In May 2016, the Bakrie Group's ownership of the Roar hung in balance after it delayed its response regarding issues surrounding its leadership to the game's governing body. The then FFA said it was frustrated by the lack of leadership, direction, and administrators at the club. It came as Chief Executive David Bakrie and other key directors had left then coach John Aloisi unable to recruit players for the 2016-17 season. So why does the Bakrie Group, who has clearly shown no interest in seriously investing in the Roar, keep running this club? In 2019, the ownership group claimed to have spent $30 million in the 8 years since buying the club back in 2011. The club had not backed recent bids to sell the club in the range of 12 to 18 million because the Bakries were keen on seeking as much money back from its investment as possible. There had been a previous bid of almost 12 million from a Russian businessman to buy the Roar, With a lack of facilities, a home ground, and any other assets outside the club, it's hard to justify any owner willing to spend more than that, more than what the Bakries want. The only thing that can save the Brisbane Roar long term is for the Bakrie Group to sell the club and have a competent owner come in who's keen to take the club back to its glory days. If it continues down this path of mismanaging the club off the field, of poor results, churning through coaches, it'll continue to devalue this club, and then no one will be willing to buy it, and it'll be worth nothing. If the Bakries really cared about the Roar, they would sell, and they do it now. That concludes today's video. Thank you once again for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't already, why not hit that subscribe button and like the video? It's completely free and helps grow the channel. We also have channel memberships. That's a way you can financially support us, but there's no pressure to do so. But any support will help grow the quality of our videos and will help us put out more video essays like this. We'll see you in the next video.